Hello, we're back again. This is Tim Lloyd from gmat.cz, part of Gain Access. We are indeed a test prep service. We not only do lessons for GMAT, but also SAT, GRE, ACT, and many other such standardized tests. This particular question is for advanced students, and it involves the beautifully wonderful world of number theory / number properties. Now, this is a data sufficiency question. We're taking for granted that you understand the method that is standard to most schools and books on the subject of data sufficiency, whereby you make decisions according to the AD or BCE split. So that's the way we move forward. We'll be analyzing first of all the question stem, then we'll be looking at statement 1 by itself, statement 2 by itself, and if necessary, of course, we'll put them together, but only if necessary. So as I say, if you're not too confident, if you're not regularly scoring above 600 on GMAT test, practice test, I would suggest come back to this when you're a bit more confident, or whatever, watch it, enjoy, fire a few questions at us. We'll be happy to get back to you. So first of all, as always, we need to decide, is this a yes/no question or a value question? Clearly it's a yes/no question. So let's actually analyze what is involved in the decision-making process of sufficiency for this yes/no question. Now, the way we do it in this school is we tell students to write down the variables from the question stem and then the limits of those variables. In this case, the limits are quite straightforward, so it's not a super rock hard difficult question. We have 4 variables. They're integers and they're either positive or negative, and that's key to establish. The question is very clear on that. 0 is not an option. Positive, negative fractions, nothing to worry about. We don't need to include them. So I put this at just below 700 for that reason. And remember, what we're going to be doing is analyzing the way in which the limits for our variables change according to the new information we're given in both statements. So let's do some deduction. We have a couple of scenarios going on. If AD as a multiple is positive, then BC as a multiple must be negative. Think about it. The result is 0. So in light of this, we then have to consider the other option as well. Case 1 or case 2. Case 2 is where A times D is negative and then B times C is positive. It has to be that particular relationship. So it's good to set this up as an if A then B. Get it clear in your mind. Consider whether there are any other deductions that need to be made. There aren't in this case. And then move forward with one method or another. You could pick numbers, or you could just build a table according to positivity or negativity. Another way to look at it is if AD could equal minus BC, or negative AD could equal BC, whatever makes you more comfortable. In this particular case, I'm going to start building up a table, and it is time consuming, which is why it pushes this question towards 700. Okay, the longer and more convoluted a question, clearly the more you are given in terms of points. So what I'm going to do in this systematic approach is start with AD as a multiple being positive. I'm going to look at, just in this case, that A is a negative integer, D is a negative integer. That means B times C as a multiple has to be negative because AD is positive. This means that what we get is 2 options. It could be B negative C positive or C positive B negative in the case where A and D are both negative. Later in a minute we'll be looking at when AD are both positive, except we have to look at every option from both angles until we're absolutely certain that we can claim sufficiency or insufficiency. So here the goal is when we consider AB divided by CD to start thinking, okay, A is negative, B is negative here, that will give us a positive numerator, D is negative, C is positive, that will give us a negative denominator. And this is the process we're going to go through now for each part. Okay, so in the early days, you probably just want to start picking numbers, but here we say, in answer to the question, no. Okay, so for that first case, AB divided by CD is not positive, it's negative. Pause, think about that if you need to. If not, let's start going through the process for each one. As you remember from earlier, the other option here when AD and both negative is that B is positive and C is negative. The result here with regard to AB divided by CD is that we have positive numerator and again, of course, negative denominator. The more practice you do, the quicker you get at this. Again, you get a no to the yes/no question. Okay. Next step, well, we want to consider an option whereby AD is negative as a multiple and BC is positive as a multiple. So just watch here as we go through the same process. Let's say B and C are both negative. Now we're going to put that in, and the other way around as well, where A is negative and D is positive, but BC is still both negative. We're going to have to consider another option where they're both positive. B and C are both positive later. So A positive, B negative gives us a negative numerator. C and D for this particular case are both negative, so positive denominator. Next one, A being negative, B being negative gives us a positive numerator, and then C being negative and D being positive gives us a negative denominator. So in terms of sufficiency, if we think of each of these four cases, each says no to the answer. We don't get a yes as well. We don't get a situation where AB divided by CD is positive, because if we did, we could stop this process and move on to the next statement. Okay, there's no reason to continue once you get once you get a yes and a no. So as we teach our students, go yes/no hunting. As soon as you get a no, look for a yes. Think, is there a shortcut to get that yes? So here now, staying within the extended limits established by statement 1, we're going to look at the other options that we haven't looked at yet, where in the first case AD are both positive, and in the second case where BC are both positive. You can see the way this works. If you need to pick numbers, go for it. The closer you get to 700 as a test taker, you know the rules of positive, negative, odd, even, etc., etc. from a number theory. So no, not positive. Check each one if you want. Always remember what the question it is. It can get quite confusing after a while, especially as halfway through a test or your blood sugar's dropping. Bear this in mind. Have safety nets. Go step by step. This is a number crunching. This is a process-oriented question, and therefore each time here you'll see that you'll get a no. Well, because we've looked at every possible option, thumbs up, the answer choice is now either A or D. Okay, the reason being we're always getting an answer no to the question whether AB divided by CD is a positive. So with this in mind now, we just have to evaluate the second clue, the second statement, and that's where A times B times C times D, the product, is a negative. Immediately the more advanced students will know, well, in that case, an odd number of those four variables must be negative, which means you could have 1 negative or 3 negative from those. So with regard to AB divided by CD, again we need to go through a process. But here we've only got two cases. The first case is where 3 of these variables are negative. Negative times negative times negative is negative, of course, for those who haven't clicked that. And it's almost a permutation question now, because wherever we put the position of that positive, whether it's C, B or A, we're always going to end up with either the numerator or the denominator being negative and the other being positive. Okay, so if you need to pick numbers, as I've said before, do so, but you can see here doesn't matter which one of these four is positive. Within the limits of that second statement, we can now say for the first case, no, AB divided by CD will not be positive, it will be negative. The second case here, instead of having three negatives, is where we have just one of those four variables negative. Okay, again, think of it in terms of a permutation. You just shift the position of the slot, if you like, for the negative, and we have exactly the same scenario. Either the numerator or denominator will be positive and the other negative. So again, we can say definitely the answer is no to the question, and therefore, because both statements by themselves were sufficient, the answer is indeed D. Now, this was a bit of a devil of a question, but they do get a lot harder. I wouldn't put it above 700 because we only really needed to look at a couple of cases for both statements, but it's definitely up there. Thanks again to the legend Sandeep Gupta for allowing us to use this and all the other questions from his advanced set. If you've got any questions, as we've said before, if you want to give us feedback or suggestions, contact us via the link in the video or via our social media. Thank you and see you again soon. Bye-bye.